attorney in Utica. And so I came here really interested in what you have to say, you know, because I'd be inclined to vote for you if I can see the way to do it. What you're talking about is really philosophical. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
My problem is that the underlying debt, and it can't be all put at the doorstep of the Republicans, but largely is the responsibility of two Bush administrations. It isn't Obama inherited significant debt, the war in Iraq and Iran, which is unfunded. You talked about sacrifice.
Yeah.
We've never been on a war footing domestically.
We've never had an unfunded war in our history.
We've never felt any kind of economic pain to support that here, which I thought was politically clever, but economically really foolish. It's much larger. It's over $1 trillion, so it's larger than 800 million in terms of bailouts, which were also initiated by the Bush administration. So you can talk about them structurally, but I'm not quite clear what the Republicans are talking about. So right now,
I agree with that.
The one issue I see, you know, kind of defining is the Republicans continue to fight heavily for continued tax breaks for people who make over $250,000, as if it's some. I think trickle down has been discredited. I don't get it. I don't understand.
No, nobody does.
But you know, Tea Party has a big influence because you know it's socialism, it's redistribution of wealth, which income tax, which is in the Constitution, is a redistribution of wealth. And so I'm really troubled by how a freshman congressman with moderate views are more articulate than the current candidate is going to make a difference. I mean,
well, you know what? I'm not going to stand here and tell you that that's the case. I didn't do this because I thought, I believe I can make a difference. Let me just back up. I agree with you about Bush. I was never a fan of George Bush. The war in Iraq was a war of choice. It was unfunded, and it was a mistake, in my view. And, you know, the fact that we're just out of it now, it's the longest war in our history. And people, I meet people, and it's, you know, it's, you look at the way, the rush to judgment about that, and it's frightening for me to think that my country could do that and not know clearly, and that you should be concerned that everybody jumped on board because it was somehow, somebody raised a flag and it became a matter of patriotism. Well, since when is patriotism defined by your willingness to go to war? But apparently it felt that way at the time. And I think that Afghanistan is an interesting case too, because, you know, historically, and you know this, 1,000 years, it's been the graveyard of empires. And, you know, the idea that you can rebuild a country like that and make it somehow resemble something that we find palatable, as opposed to doing what I think our intention was, is to meet our enemy, prevent Al-Qaeda from growing and the Taliban from growing and all of those kinds of things, kind of quelching that threat and having some control over the growth of that threat. Does that necessarily mean we have to take over a country to do that? Personally, I don't think so. But, you know, what do I know? I've never been in the armed services. I'm not an expert in that. I think that the fundamental problem is exactly as you say, that, I mean, you didn't say this, but from my perspective, the Republican Party has not been true to their own ideals. I think that they have been co-opted in many ways by the far right of their party, that they have been identified by a whole series of social issues that frankly are important to a lot of people. Some are, and I respect that, but that a lot of it at these times in our history need to be not focused on as much, because we have much more pressing issues. And instead of having intellectual conversations about how we fix things, we wound up letting ourselves be overwhelmed by I don't want to use the word incidental, they're not, but by things that really we should put aside and deal with more fundamental and bigger problems, and we don't do that. I think the Democrats want bigger and more expensive programs, and they want to help people and do good throughout. And I think that the Republicans want to talk about tax cuts incessantly and big government incessantly, but the simple truth is that it's really, at the end of the day, if you don't cut spending, you're really killing the beast that's eating you alive. As I said earlier, spending is, deficits are a symptom of spending, and not the reverse. So, you know, people need to recognize that, and you need to know, I think, and I'm just figuring out that the growth of government is antithetical to the success at some point of the rest of us out here trying to live in the private sector. Because there is a point at which too many people are in the cart and there's not enough people pulling. There is a point where when your average state and federal employee makes someplace between 70 and 100% more than a private person that's that sustainable. There are marginal efficiencies where somebody, where you have so many employees per capita that you have this unsustainable system. Like, you know, New York is a great place to live if you want to view the future of the country in many ways. In my view, yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought. So a long-winded way of saying I agree with you. I'm not happy all the time about the party I'm with. I have the conservative endorsement. I find them to be very committed, very thoughtful. I don't agree with them 100%. I'm probably 80% aligned with them. But for the moment, you know, I think that we're on the same page, that our issues are primarily economic, that it's the growth and sustainability of opportunity in this country that's important. In as much as I'm standing here, I want to tell you the number one thing I think is wrong in this country is the neglect, and I've always thought this, of our educational system. That at the turn in 1950, we were, and beyond, we were the number one educator of, producer of college graduates at every level, whatever it was, we were the best. And now we're something like 12th in terms of 36 developed nations that people get college degrees from. That is a recipe for disaster. Because if you want to make stuff and work for 10, 12 bucks an hour, fine. But you're not going to have the standard of living that this country has given people and enjoyed doing that anymore. You know, we need people, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Oracle, I can't remember the guy's name, but all those kinds of people. And we need to produce things again. And we shouldn't be afraid of the rest of the world like so many people are. I mean, 95% of this world's population is outside of our border. That's an opportunity. It always has been, always will be. We just have to figure out a way to deal with it and get out there and do what we do best, and that's compete. You know, protectionism has its place in well-negotiated contracts, but as a raw idea, it's not sustainable. We can't grow our economy without engaging the rest of the world. And you know, it's just like immigration. People have this hue and cry about immigration. I don't look around the room. I doubt if there's a person here who is an immigrant, or your parents or their parents, unless you're an American immigrant. You know, it's been a source of vitality and energy and enthusiasm, and that's why so many people want to be here. We need to find good legal ways to get people in this country who can add to our productive capacity and contribute. And we haven't been very good at that. We've allowed ourselves to be, you know, the benefactors of a lot of lower-end working people who, you know, and now there's a lot of resentment because unemployment's high. But we haven't done a very good job of controlling our borders, who comes and goes, what they add, where they live, what they do. And, you know, we need to think about that too. But, you know, I mean, people are graduating from college now saying, what do I do? I don't know if that's entirely true, but you know, that wasn't a question when I got out of college. I mean, it's just a matter of where do I go and how many places want me, and they were there. I chose to go in business for myself, but you know, you may not. Your concern should be, what have people done to deplete my opportunity, and how can I help them undo that? And what kinds of sacrifices does that mean, initiate? Because they're going to be there. And something that's out of the American lexicon now is sacrifice. It never was that way. You talk about wars that were funded. People accepted, you know, victory gardens and buying war bonds and all of those things, and having their taxes raised for war. I wonder what these two wars would look like if people were told they had to pay for them, and that they were just a war that we borrowed to pay for. Regardless of how you feel about them, I think, you know, maybe we wouldn't be so quick to judge and rush to judgment.